Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. A little tired. Jesse and I stayed up in the Quality Research Institute has a weekly casual meeting and we showed up and we ended up talking till 2 a.m. to one of the participants who has similar research interests.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. I got pointed to some math I could learn about graphlets.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Network theory and non-Euclidean geometry.
Wow. Yeah.
Here's good. They're kind of psycho, not ish. Like it's definitely drugs came up a lot, but they were relating it a lot to phenomenology and mathematics, which I found fascinating. Like talking about how different drugs lead to different perception, higher dimensionality of perception. I think was said.
Oh, yeah.
Or they talked a lot about I ended up talking somewhat about my research interests, and also I ended up making a reading group with a couple people to go through Friston's free energy principle and other foundational texts in CogSci.
Yeah. That sounds pretty good. I guess we're waiting for Jesse, maybe some other people to show up, but... So thanks for sending those.
I read your responses, but I didn't. I forgot to respond. I think the link you sent me looks really relevant. I definitely want to look into that.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is right now, but...
It was a network theory article.
Oh, yeah, that paper. Yeah, that was just something... I mean, that's something that's... I think it's pretty long, but...
Yeah,
it's like a similar idea.
Beyond pairwise, no something. Yeah.
It's Jesse. Yeah, so I mean, I'll send you stuff from time to time, and it's for your reference. So I just like if I come up with some idea for a paper. And,
yeah.
So that's I like those. Hi Jesse, how are you?
We talked. I talked to one of the people about how I could computationally model the Nyatinei gerontomorphic graph-style robust axes. I could go over how theoretically I model that some later time.
Yeah.
It was interesting. He definitely helped me clear up the mechanics of how I like to program it and what the computation and particular functions would be.
Oh wow! Yeah.
It's pretty simple though. It's not particularly it doesn't include much advanced math. It's just a very simple mock-up of what represent the concepts.
Yeah. Yep.
What research group does he work for again, Jesse?
Oh, Blake?
Yeah.
He's currently with Northeastern Complex Systems Institute.
Yeah.
Next week.
He's the friend we made. He's an intern there. They're currently focused on COVID stuff, but they do get into more theoretical content. They tend to go back and forth between applied and theoretical.
Yeah.
he has a similar interest in development of biology, evolution, information theory, and just a very wide-reaching approach towards cognitive science topics.
Yeah. So Jesse, I was talking about Anson. He sent me some sketches of some of his ideas. It was a DM in Slack, but we kind of went over it.
I also showed Jesse in different.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something you wanted to go over today, or?
I could talk it over. Yeah. I didn't have. Oh, actually, I do have a Google Doc, but I haven't written up much beyond the diagrams.
Yeah.
But I can talk it over quickly. I guess it would be interesting chance to talk over the implementation, which I've further clarified, but I haven't written down. Maybe just link the Google Doc in a moment. I can just screen share, right?
Yeah, screen share.
Also, I know there was, just to put this out there for agenda stuff, there won't be a full presentation of affordances today, but maybe a slight talk about what would go in the presentation. But there's just to let you know, there's not like a full presentation ready right now.
Okay.
I plan on working on Jesse with that throughout the week.
Okay. All right.
Let me screen share. Present now. I guess I'll press my entire screen.
Yeah.
Share. Can you see my? Oh wait, it's still.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yep. So here. So I organized. So these are rough, intuitive notions that I've gained through introspection and engaging in some esoteric content, and these generally are different strategies. Allostatic strategies, kinds, and formal underlying processing structures that I believe can be reasoned out through the first principle reasoning of internal, external relations and the blockage and the bottlenecks in processing and functional requirements within a allostatic unit. The first demonstration of how this would look like would be this diagram here, allostatic kinds. So this is this diagram explains how there is a how in a homeostatic agent that is delineated by some kind of boundary. An easy example would be a cell. In a human, it's easier to think of it as subjective content and objective content rather than being spatially defined, though I believe that in the case of something like a cell, you can think of this as spatially defined in a very intuitive manner as being isomorphic to the more psychological subjective structures that you might associate these with in humans. If I did a write-up of this, I probably wouldn't make their primary names these, because I would probably choose more neutral, complex systems names that are easy to generalize without the baggage that they have in humans. Because I think that's the real insight of proposing this is. But I think for the sake of quickly illustrating how these might manifest, using human psychological relatable terms is illustrative. So how this is set up is you have your boundary, you have the subjective content, and within you can think of these as interior standards of balance and self-organization, and then you have external content, which would be external objects and perhaps actions. So relating subjective content to other subjective content leads to something isomorphic to emotions. So you could probably, a more neutral name for this might just be subjective to subjective content. Relating subjective content to volition, to external content leads to volition, the enactment of just subjective preferences onto an external world. This you can think of this as both independent and interlinked in the sense that you enact your emotions through volition onto your schemas of the world, or you can think of them as separate processes that are kinds of relations. I think both are valid. In the relating other external content to schemas, and relating and manipulating external content to match subjective preferences. Organizing how external content impacts you would be consumption. The sort of taking on things in order to achieve allostatic desired effects rather than enact particular states would be a consumption. So this is a useful, intuitive introduction to the kind of dichotomies by which to create. Another important dynamic for the source book I want to create is scales. I haven't gone into the network theory or non-Euclidean geometry that can really formally articulate how this would be, how this would mechanically operate. But the intuitive idea is you have different causal structures in different that I believe are fairly independent. That I hypothesize one explanation for it could be based off the number of agents or possibly just objective subjective content being linked together such that they more efficiently are compared to and prioritized in the context of other similarly numbered node groupings. So my illustration here, you can see that in for example, this basic prioritization of allotment onto different onto different agents around you or objects around you, you can represent this just by different percentages allotted to each one, and then so the number of agents that you can attach onto or can I guess hold on to would be based off the cohesion of each one, so such that the amount of resources you put onto these agents or objects don't still lead to a cohesion onto you rather than and significant enough that you still wish to prioritize it. So I think each one it isn't just purely one relation, it's actually many single relations, whereas for example in a 3-node relation it is multiple triangles of relations such that for example, in a like theoretical system, like a personality system, for example, if you have a hypothesis that people have fairly consistent preferences of scales of social interactions, someone who, let's say, primarily is interested in three-node relations won't just be interested in one single three-node relation, but multiple ones until they are fully saturated by the amount of utility, for example, like utility that they are deriving from these different three-node relation units. And similarly, a four-node has a similar sort of multiplicity of all the combinations of possible node networks. I believe that this is called the different possible graphets, so I think graphite has a few connotations that are a little different. The next idea are allostatic stances, or I guess one way to think of this might be better are ecological allostatic strategies. So if you have the terminology that I use is normally used in terms of morphology, but I think they're isomorphic to underlying homeostatic preferences that lead to the adoption of these morphological states. Morphological properties. So you have you can mathematically represent each one in this manner. You have the allostatic regulatory niche and the boundary, the encapsulating boundary and perturbation, external perturbations. Within your allostatic niche, you have the Grasshopper strategy, which I guess if you want to relate it to a graspable, intuitive notion, you can relate it to the archetypical notions related to femininity, though I believe men can be gracile. The gracile strategies are about fully utilizing and internalizing and maintaining what is brought inside your allostatic niche. Whereas it's about it is complementary to robust strategies which seek to maximize perturbations while remaining fairly stable within a certain secure range in order to seek out utility rewards for higher risk or higher or more unknown endeavors. And then you have the other axis of complementary strategies, which are neotenous, which is the embodiment of subject. I should define what neoteny is first. Neoteny is morphologically the retaining of childlike features into adulthood. How I'm using it here is that neoteny can be neoteny can also be used similarly to describe a particular kind of allostatic strategy. The idea that neoteny standards have to do with embodying active standards of sensitivity and active processing demands, whereas you could think of this like a crying baby, or oftentimes what children, the sort of pickiness and the need for external consistent structure you associate with children. And then a gerontomorphic strategy would be a flexible, it's outside the niche, but it's focused on steadily expanding the niche to meet those, to meet the sensitivities of monotonous or span what is secure. It is inherently focused on tending and security and caretaking. If you want to think this archetypically, you might think of this as a parent, as a they caretake, and they're willing to take more risk in order to expand the resource need for security and stable processing. But at the same time, they tend not to wander too far from the niche, from security and home, because they're interested in building the secure, steady environment and prioritize that rather than taking risks to exploit resources. And a computational model of this might be, I talked this out last night with, I forgot his name, but you can, when you think of, I might want to draw this up later, but imagine like a grid of blocks. Within each block, you have a randomly assigned number that each time unit goes up or down one. And then you have agents within this territory whose goal is to maintain blocks at the value of 5. These agents additionally have the ability to move the value of 1 to move the value of these blocks up or down by 1. So within this conceptualization, gracile strategies tend to stay near the core. All of them have a bit of a wandering function, but gracile tends to stay near the core, mountains around the edges, ransomorphic tends to stay around the edges of the perturbation, I guess, outside the niche, whereas robust tends to be much more aggressive about expanding that niche. So that you can think of an alternative way to program this would be they have the ability to pick up blocks when blocks being the integer that I mentioned earlier within each square. So such that the neotenous and gracile types strategies. You can think of the neotenous and gracile strategies as being within the niche, gerontomorphic robust being outside the niche, gracile and gerontomorphic having active demands. Sorry, other way around. Neotenous and robust having active demands, while gracile and gerontomorphic strategies are receptive and adaptive, so such that in practice, for example, a neotenous strategy is incompatible with robust strategy because the neotenous strategies wish for their in-niche active demands to be complementary met by an adaptive agent that will be willing to fluidly adapt to those demands. Such, like for example, a parent, the way that a parent reacts to a child's demands rather than, whereas a robust strategies prefer to be the one setting conditions and heading into and tend to prefer to head into unknown territories rather than complementary and the niches sensitivities. You can think of so within that there are other the computational the computational mock-up of how this would resolve has a lot of different possibilities for expansion, but the general strategy would be that kind of, you have agents with the goal of maintaining some kind of homeostatic range, and within that, the neotenists tend to either stay around the boundaries, or another possible way to quantify would be different strategies around, such that different strategies of number of blocks obtained can think of like graph cell neotenists and the ability to pick up blocks, whereas gerontomorphic and robust have the ability to have, but tend to, I guess all of them have the ability to pick up blocks, but they use those picking up blocks differently. You could think of graph cell type. Graph cell maybe picks up more blocks and neotenist picks up less, but has more time steps, for example. There's different ways I could codify this, and I would need to work through what aligns most and illustrates the fundamental structural dynamics, that allostatic structural dynamics that I wish to illustrate. But moving on to how this is one way that these ideas can interact. I probably should just use neoteny, graph style, robust, but childlike neotenist, caretaker is gerontomorphic, dominant being robust, and submissive being graph style. I'm not entirely, I think that's fairly weird. I just wanted something that was more relatable, but I think in retrospect, I probably would use these terms a bit more. Less baggage of associations, but how you can conceptualize one way of the previous structures that I articulated interacting together would be, you have the different scales to represent, for example, solitude, pairwise interactions, community, and global interactions, and within each you have each of these different allostatic kinds differentiating different kinds of interactions within each scale. So, and then within each scale, my argument would be that this is a sort of internal representation of your external ecology, and these are sort of default allostatic strategies that you distinctly have within each of these. I guess you can think of them as different drawers.
Right.
And one interesting application of this is, I intuitively, and I've heard different people talk about like projecting agents onto your environment, but though I haven't actually read much of the literature. I tend to think that you have an accumulation of your sensory experiences that you create archetypical projections to literally project onto your physical environment, and in order to facilitate and encourage the right kind of allostatic behavior from yourself. And I think that, and a sort of quick mapping onto of the allostatic properties of your environment, I think two possible ways to apply this to characterize these archetypical environmental projections would be, one, those projected archetypes might have different allostatic stances that characterize it, such as like conceptions, archetypical projections of, like, say, God having different, like, for example, maybe having different global, robust and gerontomorphic structures in the global scale, for example, and within the community of certain associations, within your personal relationship with God, your personal relations. I'm an atheist, so maybe that's a little awkward for me to use an example, but I think it's a convenient example. Also, there might be another possible way to determine this is you define it in relation to your own subjective processing standards, but within each one of these you have a degree of safety versus threat, and in relation to your allostatic preference model, such that it would play out similar to my previous description of how this mechanism could play out, but in this model, I think this should be a little bit closer to how we actually do it, where there are constructed archetypes where these are more spaces that don't all need to be filled out, but rather particular ones end up having particular value shifts in your allostatic stance associated with them that you then link to sensory information that you project out into your senses in a predictive mapping onto fashion. For example, like when you have creepy crawlies and you experience the feeling, and then you have an itchy feeling, you could quantify the kind of that projected bug being a threat in, say, a consumption and regulation manner in, say, I guess, solitude, for example, to a certain degree. And I think illustrating a more intuitive, ecological picture, a picture of an actual ecology, and how you would map on these different drawers onto that ecology, like literally like the rainforest might be an interesting exercise. These are different mechanisms that I intuitively think are salient towards information processing. You have, I think there is sort of like a dichotomous chronological states of processing, and they do form a intuitive, natural progression in that you accept some kind of context for your drive, you begin it and feel out the edges of what that context solidly is. You resolve that context, and then you complete it and execute it. So within this, these two axes are fluid and adaptive, or these two axes are crystallized or you'll think of it as inactive. Whereas the 3 and 4 are activation oriented, whereas not sort of activation, but 3 and 4 are oriented towards ending the process and one who's interested in initiating starting up the process. So, and then the other dynamic that I find interesting is the idea that we have a particular stacking of your of different kinds of or types of priorities or content that has certain properties associated with the order of the stacking. And there might be consistent stacking information comparison. On the first stacking, this would be I sort of borrowed some of the terms from earlier, but I believe that they're a little bit more mixed, that they are kind of mixed. So then we have maximizations, regulation, constraints, and minimizations. I believe that perhaps in human personality, the allostatic kinds and scales might both fit into this sort of stacking of preferences model. For example, within the different scales, the delineated, solitude, pairwise, small group, you can play. They might form a consistent sequence of prioritization that has these sort of characterizations. Whereas the first one is maximized, the second one is regulated, the third one is constrained, the fourth one is minimized. In terms of active processing of that information content, in order to, I believe that to some extent, how you process information, they're processing it, the way that you process it, in terms of a consistent information processing structure, these tend to be strategies that aren't mixed for efficient comparison and prioritization. And this is the illustration of how the previous concepts and diagrams that I listed could all fit into one visual model.
Okay.
Within here, you have a reference subject. You can think of this as the self that other things are defined to, everything else are other agents and subjects. So, to start with scale stacking, the different different scales of multiplicity of nodes and prioritization of those scales would be represented as within the active processing of how you relate to other agents and scales, the units which extend outwards from your base unit. And then in a weird meta way, I might look into the first principles of why I think it plays out this way, but I honestly don't have that answer right now, though I think it is sort of an elegant mapping onto. You could attribute the chronological meta level of prediction, which would be, I think it would be, oops, I guess I covered these two first. Sorry. So, this is the levels of distractions, chronological meta level, types of prediction, and allostasis. The idea here is you have, so this somewhat borrows from Freud, in that you have id, an ego, superego. Over here, argue the creation of a super id to fit the dichotomies that I've structured up. That sort of, if you think of super ego as unifying universal content, you can think of super id as descriptive. Applied theory. So you can conceptualize this in terms of geometric content, with the id being aligned with instinctual, momentary, allostatic standards. It's a sort of with the corresponding primal qualities that we associate with it, with a focus on self, we are presented in terms of adopt your own agent, perhaps other gods interacting with other agents, the theoretical constraints of you as a single entity. Then you have ego, which is regulation oriented. In terms of data, you can think of this as the adding of an axis of time, how your interactions will evolve throughout, how your own personal self will, the trends involved a model of how these of your own processing standards will have effect in the future, how they're being motivated by the past, and these lead to sort of day-to-day regulation, the balance orientation, and the sort of content that you might associate with day-to-day, almost avian or mammalian regulation, or in homeostasis. And then you have super aid, which I can think of a better term as this meta time, but it might perhaps be a more illustrated term. The idea is you add another axis, and then there is now a quantifying of how universal, of different ways that your own agential preferences can be described in a more generalized and non-specific manner. There's another axis of time, perhaps a plurality of qualitatively experienced allostatic processing standards. This would lead to sort of cognitive content that we associate with applied theory. And then you have meta time, which again might not be the most illustrative term, but relates to universal theory, philosophy, the unification of changing of the description of changing states, such that there's now an additional axis that you get that detailed for ways that these two axes can be manipulated without the sort of specificity and groundedness that only two axes provide. Perhaps axes aren't the best way to concept to formalize the intuition that I'm trying to pin down here, but there is a sort of additional adding of maybe not dimensions, but independent, abstraction, unification, additional level complexity that can be processed, and and then within each of these 4 layers you have 4 different kinds based off. You can think of this as perhaps something along these lines, but the 4 different stacking positions, but not stacked per se, so much as someone as an agent might actively be stacking, though I think there is sometimes stacking going on, but more so within the moment you have different orientations you can take. You can be aggressive about your instinctual desires, you can more so passively accept your instinctual desires and enact them, and focus on processing and prioritizing just simply the acceptance of what you want rather than the active lust of more. Whereas, for example, in the super ego, you can conceptualize this as rejection, or application, the full application of super ego content. I don't think it should be applied to ethics. I think it should just be ethics in general. Whereas, I guess it's applied in comparison to what would be more of a flexible yet still applied approach to be regulation with more theoretical ethics. A focus on constraints might be something that more along the lines of phenomenology and metaphysics, whereas a focus on acceptance and receptivity might be like philosophy of mind, or philosophy of language, other unifying theoretical content that's purely based in purely descriptive unified sense. Like I think Wittgenstein very much so fits into this, in so much as he's focused more on a purely. He might be this way actually, but he's one of these two in terms of his interest in describing the world in a sort of projection of possible spatial possible information projections rather than information theoretical projections rather than having one unifying applied meta theory. I think there's interesting. This is interesting applications in terms of one. This is a model that allows you to frame how different ethical systems or different fields operate in different spaces. Two, I think in an application for artificial intelligence, this could be a geometric representation of how you can attain abstract thought from allostasis. And then, so the last particular system that I have is inspired a lot by Jungian archetypes and functions, but I believe that you can divorce it from that. I don't want to deal with the baggage, but it's easy to describe it in those terms, and because the way it's described is illustrative in terms of how these are described. So, again, you have a reference subject, and then you have an object number one, an object number two. I wish I knew more physics, because that'd be interesting to apply here. It might lead to more elegant, insightful formalizations, but the basic idea is there are different, you can conceptualize different particular metabolic cognitive processing kinds of information in terms of object to object to subject relations in the direction and the directions and indirections of that relation. For example, what is called extrovert intuition or intuition of possibilities, it relates to the indirect relationships that the objects have with other objects. And I think you could even model indirectness more quantitatively as there are other objects or agents that are being that you can fluctuate and change or being involved in a plurality before the measured impact onto said object. Whereas extrovert sensing relates to a force and application of direct force, and that would be more direct object-to-object interactions. For another one, for example, would be introvert intuition. It has to do with formalized logical structures and axioms, and you can think of this in terms geometrically as objects interacting with your subjective standards directly, the sort of internalization of internal rules based off directly of your observations of objects, whereas introverted ethics or introverted feeling relates to how objects affect your subjective self-organizational standards, but in a more indirect manner where rather than rules of interaction with said objects to meet your balance goals, you now have a plurality of how that object could affect you, that you solidify into a more complex relation with that object. And then, for example, one more example, the difference between what is called introvert sensing and intuition. Introvert sensing would be related to direct embodiment of homeostatic experience and personal sensory experience, internal sensory experience, whereas introvert intuition are unified universal processes. You can think of introverted sensing as the direct subject to subject kinds of relations and dynamics. It is the self-organization. It is the processing of self-organizing direct experience, whereas introverted intuition is the processing of, it is the pluralized version of direct sensory experience, where you're relating the subjective content to other subjective content in a more ambiguous and changeable, configurable manner involving a multiplicity of internal subjective standards, which manifests as an internal modeling of the complexity of your environment and your relationship to, rather than a direct individualized relationship, a universal trends that you belong within, as the plurality creates that, the plurality and indirectness creates that sort of space for meta description of personal trends and standards. So now I can actually discuss further how these ideas each other together and lead to and can be combined to a singular model. You have the chronological meta levels of prediction. So each one of these systems would be a processing modality and structure for a different dynamic of subject, objects, and other multi-agential or multi-agential interactions. So chronological meta levels of prediction, the description of abstract cognition as a geometric meta layers of abstraction and accumulate and addition and integration into a allostatic basic individual perceptions. You can think of this as related to what in my earlier allostatic kind documents has a sort of subject to object dynamic, which would be intuitively described as volition. This system can be described as prioritizing your placement and focus and realm of where you want your allostatic content to be organized. Let's say this applies to personality. Someone who prioritizes id content, I'll just say, I don't know, probably applied id, would be focused on the maximization of their personal specific gain, whereas someone who is applied version of superego would be interested in applying their universal ethical standards, universal unifying ethical standards when they, in terms of their interactions of their subjective standards to objects. Whereas the allostatic kinds, which in a weird, it can be a little confusing because I'm describing it as a way of conceptualizing interactions, but the stacking of those allostatic kinds can be conceptualized as being isomorphic to consumption, objects to subject relations, in that it is the prioritization and organization of your allostatic. I think this one's a bit of a scratch, to be honest, but the reasoning is that the allostatic kinds, would relate to consumption in terms of you're relating how objects relate to your subjective content and the different possible homeostatic relationships you have with it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I had to talk it out first. And then you have the conjugate field of objects, which relates to Jungian. If I actually wrote this up, I'd low-key probably wipe Jung's language because I don't want the associations with psychoanalysis when I'm interested more in the base information theoretic geometric approach. But I think there's insights there that are pretty specific. So this would relate to schemas, your abstract conceptualization of the world, the models you build, whereas finally the ecological allostatic roles. This here, which I think can be applied in terms of one, your personal processing modalities, and two, your archetypical projections can be conceptualized as relates subjective to other subjective relations, into the administrative human scale as emotions, which has to do with your own relation of your own self-orientation, self-organization. I think in terms of how I wish to apply this, I think I probably want to do a mock-up of just one of these first, and then slowly build up to integrating all of them, and then I want to relate to something along the lines of the energy principle. Theoretically, I see I can easily relate to ecological and body cognition. I can also relate it to polyrealism, and that polyrealism has similar goals of formalizing the structure of subjective experiences, and I think in terms of Breitenberg vehicles are a very simplified model of homeostasis, and I think adding these sort of, I guess if I had to describe, ecological, allostatic, information theoretic, organizational structures would be a interesting way of providing a way for the Breitenberg to integrate and relate to other agents, objects, and environments in a life-like manner, though I'm sure that it necessarily needs to be simplified, and none of these systems even touch actual sensory processing, and I'm sure that my projection of structures will evolve. I'm still looking for first principles for why these things are here. There's a lot of isomorphic structures between systems, and I'm sure that as I explore first principles, that my understanding of why things are laid out in a way similar to this, and the particular way I lay them out will evolve.
Right.
So that's about it.
Okay. So yeah, thank you. That was very good. I think there's going to be a lot to say about that, and I'm glad you were able to get the sort of the full description of this, because I didn't, there's a lot in here to unpack. So I found that when you unpack things this way, you can maybe get in touch with some of the issues. So I'm going to have this recorded, so you can go back and look at it. I would recommend that, because there's a lot there that you kind of didn't have in the figure, but you kind of so yeah, I think that this is definitely when I think of contextual geometric structures, I think that there are a lot of parallels here, and we were actually, Jesse mentioned something about information geometry. And I told him that I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's very consistent, and I think this is consistent with it as well. So there's this sort of relationship between those three things that when you were talking, I was thinking about this. That there's this some sort of basically what you're trying to do is take things that are maybe related to the mind, or related to things like the like an ecological approach and mapping them to a representation that's geometric, and that there's something there underlying that's that you can characterize in a metric space. So there's some structure there, maybe even hidden structure that we don't really think about when we use these terms, that can be related on a space. And so yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting. I don't know. Well, let me think about this for a while, and we can maybe decide on some things to focus on, especially in terms of parallels. We talked about Bradenburg vehicles. That's going to be a separate thing, but that's also something that can be related to this, or other kinds of models where you have maybe some heavy information processing, and then you're mapping them to these kind of structures, which are maybe higher level organization of representations of things, where you need some environmental input. Because right now, you have, like you say, it's an internal model, but the environment isn't just there, and you have to process it somehow. I mean, that's what the brain does. The brain processes information, then it brings it into what we call the mind, which is this thing we don't really understand very well, but it's definitely there. If you think about thinking and feeling, and so that's there. It's just what exactly is it? And of course, materialists would tell you that the mind is, somewhere between an illusion and maybe something that's, not be phenomena, or maybe it's something that emerges from the brain. So, but I think that there's some sort of, representational aspect to it. How do you take inputs from the environment, assemble them, and then, have a mind?
I think a first interesting step might be to apply those to integrate this into Friston's more mathematically rigorous interdisciplinary models. And then a secondary step might be to, I think, spatially, it would be interesting to apply to a human cell. In that, I think, or maybe it's a simpler cell than human, in that I think these sort of dynamics are more spatially mapped onto a cell, whereas for a human, there's weird abstraction scale things going on that aren't inherently just spatial and physically defined. They have to do with the quality of information itself. So I think that would be an interesting approach. Another interesting approach would be, first step I think is just making mock-ups and that logo of what these dynamics would look like in terms of an agential model and agential simulation.
Yeah, I think, so I think the part about making a simulation or moving towards a simulation is interesting. So maybe that's a next step, is to maybe think about how you would take some of these ideas and put it into a simulation. And don't worry about throwing anything away, just focus on one thing that's particularly salient that you want to model, and then try that first. I think the one idea you had about the what was it, the grid with the allostatic strategies is an interesting way forward to begin with.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of this, and in one sense, I didn't I'm not trying to merge two ideas too much when they may not be, but a lot of when I wrote my proposal for the code things and the CGS and what I would focus on, I was interested in particularly in sort of the teamwork aspect, and there are a lot of applications how agents would be relating along the lines of what Anson said. So I mean, if that's a combined route to go, going towards that logo and using that, and I still am not sure how to really. I don't know if NetLogo is compatible with CGS itself. I don't quite know that how I would develop that in that logo necessarily.
Yeah.
But I'm looking. But that would be the concepts are there.
Yeah.
At least.
I think net logo. Well, I might actually do a presentation on CGS and put it in a video because I have some stuff on this. So basically, the idea would be that there are two parts of the CGS idea. One is where you have this internal representation, which is geometric, and then there's a second part which you didn't talk about so much yet, which is sort of a field model where you have agents in a space that are interacting. So it's like, the second part I think would be good for net logo, where you'd have interacting agents or things that it goes beyond just the internal representation.
That seems very copacetic with what this model is trying to articulate. What are there any introductory material on CGS I could look into?
Well, yeah, I have some. I can post that. I think I'm gonna do a presentation and put it online this week, and I rework the slides a bit. It's something probably take about an hour, so I don't want to do it in the meeting. But it's like I've kind of updated the slides that I have up already.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get it a little bit more accessible to what we're talking about currently. So.
I apologize for linking my presentation, by the way. To be honest, I wasn't fully prepared to present, and it's pretty dense and roughly linked in my mind, so I apologize for taking up the whole hour.
No, that's fine. It's good to get this stuff out in one sitting, so if it's there, you got to get it out of your head.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to do the CGS thing separately because I think it's kind of, standalone thing. It'd just be a reference for people.
Yeah.
I think, but so it's like there is the second part of it that's, where you have, agents that are interacting, or it's beyond that original kernel that we've talked about previously. So there is a second part, but yeah, that would be good for net logo. Within the agent itself, though, there's a representation that I don't think is necessarily because net logo is an agent-based model, so. It requires you to encode different agents interacting, and so it's more like there are a lot of ways you can implement that, but so you can't. Certain things aren't necessarily as suitable as others.
If we could pull up, it'd be interesting motivation to learn Python. I learn Python anyways.
Yeah.
As a segue, I don't know what else you wanted to talk about in terms of Neuromatch, or we're already over the time, so I don't know.
Well, let me give a quick, and then we can do the stuff on affordances next week. The Neuromatch thing, I'm setting up a group that is like a study group, mentorship group. So you're going to have the 3 weeks of Neuromatch, and I've seen the lectures, they're pretty intense. So you're going to have a lot of stuff to chew on over the week. But I was thinking a review session, or I can what I was thinking of doing was presenting above and beyond, sort of tying things into this. And so I don't exactly know how it's going to be structured yet, but we're going to have we'll have a group, and if people are interested, please invite them. Have them send me an email to get involved. But we'd have this group, and we'd maybe do half an hour of review of concepts, or talking about what was interesting that week, and then the second half would be tying in some of these ideas to larger things, or getting giving it a little broader context, because you're going to have I think you're going to have tutorials, and you're going to have some topics, but I don't know how much it's going to be integrated into other things. And so that's basically the structure. And I've actually put up some things on GitHub, on the orthogonal research GitHub.
That looked good. I showed it to a few people. Also, I know I at least have three. I have one person who's probably 100% going to join us. And Rebecca, I know Anson knows Rebecca too. She said she'll check it out, even though she might work. Like, will it be something that people should only be there for the meeting, or that they can join like the Slack or whatever is going to be part of it?
Yeah.
It's not at that Saturday morning time.
Well, I was thinking of having it like a multimodal thing. So like, we could have the meetings, and then we could have like a Slack, because I think it would be helpful to people not just to have like a regurgitation session, but like to have like true interaction amongst our little group. And then you're going to have a project as well. So the project is going to be, and this is why I sent this thing out about the projects on Slack. They're going to have projects, and they asked us to propose projects that we might want to do.
Projects could choose?
Well, I think the idea is they're going to have a project for different groups to engage with. So like they had 4 data sets, and they said, can you think of projects around these data sets? So I think what they're going to do is they're going to have a couple of data sets for people to work with. They're like range from behavioral data to neuroimaging data to like calcium imaging data. And so you're going to have to, I guess, do a project around that. And that's also where these groups are going to come in handy. So that's going to be the other function of the group, is to talk about these projects and, how to get your bearings. So we'll probably have more than just one meeting a week during the session. We'll probably have like meetings during the week, like for these projects.
Yeah.
For now, I'm thinking about, I'm going to set up my review schedule probably today. I think I have a lot to get through.
To be honest, it's going to be here soon.
Yeah, I need to get my hands dirty and just dig through it ASAP.
Could you stop presenting, Anson, by the way?
Oh.
Yeah.
So you don't see your email and everything. Is there anything else? I might ask one item before we go, if there's anything else. Real quick, I just wanted to kind of mention this to Anson and also to you, Bradley, if you have any particular thing.
Okay.
How do I do this? Chrome tab? Can you see this?
Oh yeah, you can see it.
This is the overview page?
Yeah, presentation overview.
Okay. I don't know. Do you just see the slide, or you see the whole?
Oh, I see the whole thing. Yeah.
I'm trying to show the singular tab, though. I don't know if it shows the rest of my screen. It says that it's showing one Chrome tab.
Yeah, I can see the tab. It's the tab.
Okay, cool. All right. I'm not going to. I'm not going to go into this. I only have a couple slides that I put together here. But what I have so far is I'm really interested in. I had for like a micro story that I'll expand upon next week. I had a really interesting experience this week because one of my friends found a stray cat that was used to being in the wild, and they're getting acclimated to living indoors. And it was just observing this cat who is totally used to being not indoors deal with being indoors, and also, it wasn't a problematic situation, but seeing how their perception of the environment was changing as they were becoming acclimated to being indoors was like a really interesting experience. And it led to, it's not quite Anson level drawing, but I did make my own drawing. I'll get to it in a second. But, so I'm really interested in the concept of direct perception. And I don't know if you have much experience with that or not, Bradley, but are you familiar with direct perception or anything like Gibsonian stuff?
Yeah, actually I've done a lot of, I've done a lot of reading on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm somewhat familiar with it.
So I will surely talk to you about this over Slack, because I feel like direct perception is one of the key things I actually want to take away when I talk about affordances, because understanding what that is and what that means, like this, and Shamaro's book goes through it in one chapter, and this is sort of the outline of that chapter, but I highlighted some things that I want to specifically dive into. I'm not going over all this stuff right now, but also dynamic systems theory as a modeling tool for this. In our talk that I think I mentioned it. Oh yeah, I over mentioned it in Slack. That's right. But Anson and I went to the first talk Thursday, and he used a term that I was interested in, which is epistemic affordances. And Anson, I didn't hear it directly. Anson put it down in notes, and I'm like, oh yeah. So I want to go back and figure out what he was saying about that, because I don't know what that really meant. But he was sort of referencing a lot of, first it's sort of a cool way of bringing in different concepts into how he's talking about things. But I want to figure out what that was. And if you guys have any other particular suggestions, that, I'm obviously not verbally speaking about these things, but if you see anything that fits with what I'm saying here, let me know after this. And the two things that I will say, briefly I'll say, this quote was really fascinating to me one time, and then even after my cat experience. Affordances cut across the dichotomy of subjective-objective and help us understand its inadequacy. I mostly focus on subjective-objective as in the actual boundary. And I know later in the book he uses these diagrams, like here's a general one, and here's, this is the perception-action part, sensory motor coupling and people's abilities, that sort of is the meta point, and the internal stuff here. And that goes to my picture up there. And here, at the end of it, he says the central question for the theory of affordances is not whether they exist or not, or are real, but whether information is available in the ambient light for direct perceiving them. And I feel like what I'm getting out of this stuff is I'm understanding. This is a very crude drawing if you look at this part of it. Like a very simple cell, outside, inside, membrane, whatever. And it's sort of metaphorically, outside or inside of the cell, or whatever the agent environment, there's these things at the mesh point itself. Going back to this, the boundary line itself has a way of engaging or being open, and where was it? What my drawing that I'm getting at here is not the same as what is being said here. This is more. This quote makes me think of the classic one that's I lost my keys in the park, so and you see the guy looking, and he's looking under the streetlight, and he's like, oh, where are your keys? They're somewhere in the field over there. Like, why are you under the streetlight? Because that's where the light is. And that's a very classic example for many things about perception and focusing on stuff. And I feel like that's sort of what, and it's somewhat adjacent to what Chimero here is talking about this. Even though Gisman's talking about this, so I'll stop and leave it at that. But if you guys have any, I'll talk more about direct perception in Slack, and if you have any particular interesting applications for the concept of affordances, let me know, because I want to talk about it and go through how Chimero's talking about it. I think that's the most accessible version of this I've talked about, but he's obviously mentioned original Gibson stuff from this 79 and other people talking about it. It's not like Chimero's idea, but I like how I put it together, and I'm finding some really interesting parts of it that I want to understand better so I can use them in other areas. So very quickly, that's what I wanted to say.
That's very good. Yeah, I think that's it looks like this is a pretty good outline. I mean, I have some experience with it, and so I don't know how much I can offer, in terms of. I mean, I can point you to things, I guess is the best way to put it. But yeah, I think I like some of these topics here. Ecological ontology is ontology is interesting. I'm not familiar with epistemic affordances, but I can. I'll probably have some thoughts about it. So,
Yeah, I have to go back either to see the video. The session was recorded, but I don't know how much that's sort of like an actual term Thurston uses or something he sort of made up or he sort of conglomerated from other people. So I don't know anything about that. But
The other part of like affordance, or I guess embodiment that's really interesting, especially with respect to affordances, is sort of this multi-sensory aspect. And you kind of talk about dynamic touch and things like that, but I think there's an interesting, and you don't have to bring it up in the talk necessarily, but there's an interesting relationship between like the different sensory modalities of like humans or animals more generally, and like this construction of a perceptual world. And so, you're putting together touch, you're putting together vision, whereas if you just had those things separately, then, you wouldn't necessarily get the full picture of what you're, experiencing. So I think that's an important thing. I don't know exactly how I would put it in a talk like this, but I would maybe bring it up.
Yeah, and I know I'm not trying to flatter you, but I actually, a lot of the times that I'm thinking about this, I keep thinking about your presentation about VR stuff at Neuromatch, and the way it's almost like I keep thinking about it from different angles, and it's almost like virtual reality is this. It's so reduced compared to interactions with the world, but you're running into the same problems of how it puts the problems in a different context. And I keep thinking, even in the cat example, which is almost impossible for me to really talk about in a coherent sense right now. Even in the cat example, it's like the cat's in its own environment, and in the natural state of it, its perception has to be so attuned to certain things. But when it becomes indoors, that level of attunement is problematic and a waste of energy. And even in a social sense, it's like, oh, you're uncouth, you're untamed, you are wild, you're not developed, you don't have this sort of cognitive distance and deprivation from stimulus. Like if you're tuned in, which is in one environment necessary for survival, and if you're that tuned in another environment, that's totally not going to benefit you. You just So there's a lot there, and I feel like eventually, probably not now, probably not even during the Neuromatch stuff, but like this is going to be. I feel like an old time picture. Like there's going to be a reckoning, but there's going to be a time coming where I'm probably going to really look more into the VR aspect of it. That would be a really interesting arena to do some stuff here.
Yeah, I think so. When I was doing a lot of the VR work, I was thinking about these kind of issues all the time. So, I mean, basically in VR, you have this system where you can take... You have a different relationship between sensory objects. So, like in the real world, we kind of have this, this stream of this optic flow or information flow. When we interact with the environment, we just interact, and we don't think. We learn how to interact with things in maybe infancy, and then we don't think about it. Things are automatic. But in VR, you can manipulate things where things may have a different weight than you might expect, or there are different interaction rules. Or you can take things out of, temporal sequence. And so you can do a lot of these sort of perturbations in VR. But you also have this sort of reconstitution of your sensory world because you're simulating things. And so when people talk about simulations, like the philosophers, when they talk about simulations, they kind of get at this issue of the construction of reality. And that's kind of what you have, except it's a very quantitative sort of thing because you have to build your environment and you can specify things. And so, I mean, that's a nice bridge between a lot of things that are qualitative and then putting like some numbers on it or some, you can have experiences that you can reconfigure, and it's understandable in terms of an empirical approach.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to talk about there, but I mean, I just wanted to, we can talk about it in Slack, or, there's a lot to explore. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for attending. Thanks, Anson, for the detailed discussion about your idea. I think that was very useful. And Jesse, about the, we can work on the affordances next week more. And then the Neuromatch Academy is coming up, and I'll be sending out more about the prep and about our part of it, our group. So if people want to join in.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything on, I forget in the moment, is there anything on GitHub that we should be interacting with, or just like...
I did have I think I invited Anson and you to be collaborators on the repository. I don't know if Anson got it in his email. Again, this is like
Is that something that, like, I don't know how much... well, I guess... in some of that is like scripted stuff, and I don't want to like interfere with that, and some of that might be are things on there stuff that's specifically going to happen before, or excuse me, during the conference time, or is there a place that we should put anything that's like before the academy starts, like prep material stuff?
Well, I think the orthogonal research repository that you can contribute to. You can put things up. I would put things up there, actually. I would make like a whole folder for your own materials, maybe, if you want to, or you can so host things there, and then we can create issues around, like, during the academy when we want to talk about projects or whatever. And then Neuromatch itself has its own repository, which is an organization. And that is not for people to contribute to, but that's just like I think there's a link to it on the orthogonal research. So that's So I think that's where they put a lot of the stuff for, like, the Python code, for example, for the tutorials are going to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for setting that up.
Yeah, no problem. And look forward to, we got to keep prepping for this, because it's going to be quite an experience.
I think that's going to be like a major... I want to keep fleshing things out between that. Like, the affordance stuff is one pass into my big macro thing. But I think everybody here, at least me, I know me and Anson are like, we want to really get ready for that, for Neuromatch, because it's going to be, it looks, even you saying, I expected them, but you said today the lectures seem like intense, and I'm like, I bet they probably will be. Yeah.
Well, I try to make them very accessible. That's, I think, their motto, but I think that it is a lot of, like, you have to pay attention, because it's not a simple stuff that you're going to be dealing with. Like, the concepts are pretty weighty, so it's like... So that's good. Well, thanks for attending, and talk to you guys on Slack. And then I'll be dropping a video this week on the CGS stuff, so that'll be out there. And then we can talk about it.
I appreciate that. I keep meaning to ask more, talk more about that, but I appreciate that. So, thank you. I'll see you guys this weekend.
See you guys later.
See you.